Preparing the live stream webinar.
It's streaming live.
It says to me it's just setting it up.
Mine says live on YouTube.
Okay. And now it redirects me to YouTube, but I don't want to be on YouTube, so I can just
close it. Yeah.
I just close it, right?
Otherwise, you'll get that ridiculous feedback loop we got last time.
And now I have to go back. Okay, carefully this way. Just check the participants. Paula's here. Promote to panelist. This is getting to be sort of easy as long as the computers work, right?
As long as the computers work.
Well, it's also helpful that we all know each other now. Right? Doing with total strangers is very stressful. But now we're all one happy family. So we're live, and we're at 72.2 with Abelard. This one ends up kind of exciting, doesn't it? And Bob, you're up. Oh, wait, you're muted. Hold it. Wait. There you go. Now you're up.
Okay. Et leo nonus contra epistolum Parmeniani de studii monasterio omnino inquit profitemur non licere episcopo presbytero diacono subdiacono proprium suorem causa religionis abicere cura sua ut nun victum et vestitum largiatur, sed non ut cum illa cardinaliter jaceat. And Leo IX, in response to the letter of Parmenius of the Monastery of Studius, says, I profess that the bishop, the presbyter, the deacon, the subdeacon, is not permitted, for the sake of his religious feelings, to reject his own wife from his care, such that he not bestow food and clothing upon her, but not in order that he should lie with her carnally.
Good. Good. One detail is it could totally mean about the monastery of Studius, but I think it means Parmenius. He thinks he's Parmenianus from the Studius monastery. But it would otherwise could totally mean that other thing. Good. Questions? Onward.
Si, et sanctus apostolus legamus agisse, beato Paolo dicente, nunquid non habemus potestatem sororem mulierem circumducendi, sicut fratres domini et cephas. And the holy apostles, and we read that the holy apostles have acted in this way, as the Blessed Paul is saying, have we not the power to lead about our sister and wife, just as the brothers of the Lord and St. Peter?
Good. Sorry. I was just going to comment that weird asyndeton with sororem mulierem kind of throws me. I always hate that. You always kind of not sure that you're getting it right. Right. Throw in an et, throw in a connective to make it make sense. Any other comment? Any other thoughts? Keep going.
Vide incipiens, quae non dixit, nunquid non habemus potestatem sororem mulierem amplactendi, sed circumducendi, scilicet mercede praedicationis sustentarentur abeis, nec tamen dinceps foret inter eos carnale conjugium. Look, oh foolish ones, because he does not say, having the power of embracing our sister and wife, but of leading her about, clearly, in order that she be sustained by them from the income of their preaching, and not, however, that thereupon there should be among them a carnal a carnal union.
Good. Yeah. Okay. I thought that little, I guess that apostrophe and vocative that is just coming out of nowhere and saying "you fool, you idiot" is quite dramatic and exciting, right? I mean, he's clearly worked up about this. I guess he's got a right to be, but I guess we should apologize in advance for the politically incorrect sentiments that are coming, but they are heritage, inheritance. I guess if you call it inheritance, it's less, or the past that we're stuck with, right? The past that we need to understand. I think that's less maybe inflammatory than heritage. I hadn't thought about that. That's the problem with the heritage thing, right? Anyway, we digress. Oh, Bob, you're not done yet. You've got this long. Yeah, some of these passages are really long. Are you ready to go on to 73.1?
Oh, I didn't. I thought I was just doing that one. Am I to continue?
Did I get it wrong? I thought that was the assignment. We can call for volunteer if you'd rather. You're frowning, Jen.
No, I think Margaret has it.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I seem to be completely incapable of making notes in the correct way. Margaret, take it away. That was great, Bob.
73.1. Ipse certe Phariseus, qui intra se de Domino ait, hic si esset profeta, sciret utique quae et qualis esset mulier, quae tanget eum, quia peccatrix est. Multo commodiorum, quantum ad humanum judicium spectat, turpitudinis conjecturam de Domino concipere poterat, quam de nobis isti. Indeed, the Pharisee himself, who within himself said concerning the Lord, Christ, I guess, Jesus, this man, and then this is contrary to fact, right? Because it's imperfect subjunctive. Mm-hmm. This man, if he were a prophet, would certainly know what woman and what kind of woman she was who touched him, who touches him, because she is a sinner.
Good.
So let's see. Then we have, is Pharisee still the subject of spectat? He well, much more proper as far as he can see about human judgment. He is able to conceive the like thoughts, the conjecture of baseness about God, Jesus, than they are able to about us, meaning
about us. Good. And it was tricky. The verb, ultimately the verb of Pharisees is poterat. Right? So the spectat kind of intervenes as far as pertains to human judgment, but then the main sentence is that certainly that Pharisee was able to conceive of a worse judgment, a judgment of worseness, a judgment of worse. We have to understand more than those about us.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So the conjecturum is something the Pharisee has, not something the Lord has. It's in the Pharisee's head. Is that?
The Pharisee was able to conceive was able to draw a conclusion about the wickedness of our Lord.
Okay.
Right.
Not about our Lord's ability to have conjectures about wickedness.
No, I mean, to the extent that a human being could have an opinion about this,
right?
The Pharisee could have it's multo commodiorum, a much more full account of the wickedness of our Lord than those people could have an account of about us. In other words, we're piker. I'm a piker. My sin is trivial compared to what the Pharisee was thinking about Jesus.
And
right?
And the woman who was a sinner, is that Mary Magdalene?
Probably.
I don't remember.
Okay.
This is such a strange and tortured statement he's trying to make here.
Mm-hmm.
That Jesus would have seemed more suspicious than I do.
Right. There's a whole series of weird a fortiori arguments, right? All these other people in the past hanging out with women are more suspect than I am, right? And after all, he does, again, to be fair, he has a point. He's been castrated, right? So he's way less of a threat. Do we get all of that Latin? Is it clear to everybody? It's hard. Keep going, Margaret.
Qui matram eius juveni commendatum vel prophetis cum viduis maxime hospitare atque conversare videbant multo probabiliorem inde suspicionem contrahere. Or those who were seen hospitari, like hanging out with and conversing. Hold on.
Those who don't remember, it's active. Those who saw his mother.
There we go. Those who saw, right, his mother hanging out with and conversing with those who saw his mother having been commended to the youth, having been
recommended to the youth. And that's the first thing. The first thing they saw. Those who saw his mother being commended to the young man. Or those who saw the prophets
being greatly commended to the widows.
Hanging out with the widows, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Okay. Is this those who saw?
Those who saw the young man commended to his mother commended to the young man, or who saw the prophets sitting with and chatting with widows, right? Absolutely absolutely staying, Maxime, actually staying presumably in their houses and talking to widows, those who saw them, they contrahere multo probabiliorum inde suspicionem.
Contract a more probable suspicion.
Right.
Likely.
Inde, from there.
From where?
From there. In other words, those who saw.
From that circumstance?
Yeah, from the two different circumstances. So remember, one of the things that's hard about this is, or puzzling, or just makes it hard, is he's got these two totally different parallels, right? There's the moment where Jesus says to John, "This is my mother, you guys be friends now," right? So that's the first thing. And the second is this thing from the Old Testament where the prophets are hanging out with widows. And what he's saying, of course, is that both of those situations are more suspicious than his situation. And I think the first one is so spectacularly unsuspicious. Like, no one ever thought anything, right? Did it ever occur to anyone, right? Even the grossest 10-year-old boy never thought that when he commends his mother to Jesus on the cross, right, that's a sexual thing, right? That could ever be taken badly, right? So it's bizarre.
Is this possibly humorous?
Oh, sure.
I mean, this is over the top. This is not something anyone sane would write. And it's not less suspicious because they were married.
Wait, who was married?
Abelard was married to Heloise at one point.
Oh, right.
I mean,
right. I see what you mean. Sure.
So to no extent could you say that what's going on in these stories is more suspicious than Abelard hanging out a lot with his ex-wife. Right.
Well, we know that narcissistic egotists can totally change the discourse, right? They can say, as it were, no one is more innocent than I am. Right? Right? No one respects women more than I do, says Abelard.
Would a malignant narcissist really have managed to become the foremost philosophical authority of his age? Yes. I mean, we know narcissists.
I think if I had become the foremost philosophic of my age, I'd be really proud of myself.
Maybe that's true.
Anyhow.
I have one grammar question before we go on. Why is contrahere infinitive? What's it depend on?
I was going to think it was a historical infinitive. Or is it third person plural syncopated form? I'm looking at Jen. I'm getting it wrong all the time.
What is
I don't know, Margaret. Ask Jen.
Yeah, Jen.
I understood a polterant with it.
Yeah,
so it's parallel to the previous
okay.
sentence.
I wondered about that.
It's unusual to have just one historical infinitive. They usually occur in groups.
Right.
It can't be a third person plural because that would be contraxere.
Yeah, it's true too. Yes. Okay. Can we just erase those comments from the internet? I want a do-over. Yes, that's much better. And also, we haven't been seeing historical infinitives in this at all, have we? I can't remember. I've been reading so much Tacitus that they happen all the time. In my slight defense. Good. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
You want me to go on?
Yeah, keep going.
73.2. Quid etiam dixissent istit detractores nostri, si malchum illum captivum monachum, de quo beatus scribit Hieronymus, eodem contubernio cum uxore victitantem conspicerent. Indeed, what would my detractors, those detractors of mine, what would they say if they saw Malchus, that captive monk, about whom the blessed, I always forget his name, is it Jerome, wrote, Let's see.
If they saw him,
if they saw him surviving or existing, almost like by means of that cohabitation, living together with his wife.
Right. I would have said just living in the same cohabitation with his wife.
Okay.
And can we revisit Dixisent because it's pluperfect? What would they have said back in the past?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right? I don't know why he switches because he's been doing these other ones in the present, right? What would they say now if they saw? But somehow this becomes more historical in his mind, or he's more aware that this was back in the past.
No.
Yeah, and then he switches. Conspicuant is imperfect.
Right. Right, that's right. Yeah, he shouldn't do that.
Very strange.
No, it's wrong.
The point about that is that as a monarchus, Malchus wasn't supposed to have a spouse that he had conjugal relations with.
Jen and Mona and Paula and I are all over this because we read the life of Malchus, I don't know, 4 years ago, a long time ago now. And it's this great story of this man who is captured by the Saracens and he's forced to marry a woman, but they're both convinced Christians, so they live chastely together for their whole lives. And he meets them when they're old. Jerome himself meets them when they're old. And they've been living this chaste existence their whole lives.
Last year?
Sorry?
Wasn't that long ago? Wasn't it last year?
Last year was Patrick.
I don't know. I thought it was maybe, I don't remember. It seems to me it was a long time ago. Anyhow.
Patrick, and before that was Brendan.
I think it was the same year as Brendan. Maybe.
It was the same year as Brendan.
Yeah, there were two.
First was Malchus and then
Yeah.
Brendan.
I don't know. Anyway, that's the point about the cohabitation. This is this famous story of these chaste married people, but living chastely.
Okay. Quanto id criminis conscriberent, quod egregius ille doctor cum vidisset, maxime commendans ait. Erat illic senex quidam nomine Malchus eustem loci indigena, annis quoque in eius contubernio. Studiosi ambo religiones et sic ecclesiae limentarentes, ut Zachariam et Elizabeth de Evangelio credores, nisi quod Johannes in medio non erat. To what crime would they ascribe it?
Or how much would they ascribe this to a crime? In other words, how much they would make this a charge?
So quanto is adverbial rather than going with criminy, or how much of a charge?
That's what I was thinking, but now maybe you're right. Maybe quantus, it's just, so quanto can mean by how much, right? But it could also be the dative of quantus.
I would go with that. I think that's nice.
To what big a crime would they? Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, to how big a crime?
Right.
Would they ascribe it? Come back to quote. That outstanding teacher, Jerome, when he saw them, commended or praised them greatly, saying, or said, praising them greatly. Is quod It's got to be an accusative relative pronoun because it always is here, but I keep hoping I get to use because.
I think it is because how they would have or the fact that.
Okay.
Right?
Isn't it just the id? It's picking up id. So to what extent time?
Oh, okay. Yes.
That.
Okay.
This thing, that. Okay. Good. Since you've stopped, before we go on again, the pluperfect we just said, here I think it's actually quite important because Jerome was writing the story of Malchus after he had met him, I think when he was a young man, if I remember rightly, at least earlier in his life. So he had seen Malchus and his wife in real life, and then he wrote the story.
Okay. So you're right. So the we just said happened long before the commandants and I.
Right.
Okay. When he had seen them, said, there was a certain old man, Malchus by name, a native of the same place.
Mm-hmm.
His wife also in his cohabitation.
Right.
Well,
His menage, right?
Right.
And there was also an old. Honest just means old lady. There was also an old lady in his.
What did I say?
You said wife.
Oh, I was thinking old lady or old
right.
grandmother.
And you got Illic, right? There was a certain amount, right?
There, yeah, I wondered about that too. So referring to the Loki.
Well, it sets up the Loki, right?
Right.
Part of the problem is you don't have the context. So he's beginning to tell the story, and I think he must say something like, "Once upon a time, I went to Syria, and there was there Malchus." I haven't actually looked up the original text, but it's it's always the problem with quotations that you kind of need the context.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Both were studious of religion. Both were studious with a connotation of eager.
Yeah.
Zealous students of religion, and thus I wasn't sure what Terentes means here. Wearing down the is that like rule of the church?
The threshold.
The threshold, but is it literal or with the contubernio, or no? It's figurative.
Well, I think it's as literal. Is it literal if you say they're beating down a path to my door? They're wearing out the threshold of my classroom.
Oh, is that what it means? Okay, that's pretty literal. Okay, I see. Wearing it out by walking on it.
Right. And notice that you've got the Sikh setting up the ut. So you're setting up a result clause, wearing out the threshold of the church to such an extent that
you would believe Zachariah and Elizabeth about the is that like the gospel, like spreading the word?
I think just from the gospel. You'd think that they were Zachariah, and we would say in the gospel.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, okay. Like of the gospel almost.
Right.
Okay. Hold on. Except that, or if not for the fact that John was not in the middle.
Right. I've always thought that was a stupid, awkward thing to say. Not stupid, awkward, right? Yeah, there is the difference. They're not like John's mother. They're just like John's mother, except they don't have baby John
in the middle.
I mean, that's just
Therefore, no activities that would produce John.
Well, that too, but that's not what they say. He didn't say they didn't have a baby. They just said they didn't have John, and of course they didn't have John.
It's folksy.
Well,
is it folksy?
Folksy. You know, you would have thought they were Zachary and Elizabeth, except they didn't have little baby John there. Does that sound folksy when I put it that way?
Because they were living chastely.
I think it's pedantic. Anyway.
Even Jerome.
I think Jerome is very pedantic, isn't he?
I guess so. I guess he's not. I guess he's more pedantic than he is folksy. He tells a lot of funny stories, though.
Yes, but in a pedantic way.
Well, it's sort of like the baby makes three thing, except, here that's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. That's right. Okay. Any other questions? Very good, Margaret. Mona, you ready?
Mm-hmm. This is section 73.3.
Just real quick, because I've got a huge thunderstorm coming on top of me, so if I disappear, I've probably lost power.
Okay.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Just FYI. Sorry, Mona.
Cor denique ad detractione sanctorum patrum se continet, quos frequenter legimus, vel etiam vidimus monasteria quoque feminarum constituere atque eis ministrare. Why denique then, or in short, do they restrain themselves, sequentinent, from slander of the Holy Fathers? Quos frequenter, whom we frequently read or see established monasteries, too, of women, and to minister to them, exemplo quidem septem diaconorum, quos pro se apostoli mensis et procurationi mulierum praefecerunt. To minister to the women, to them, after or by the example, in fact, of the 7 deacons, whom the apostles appointed in place of themselves for the tables, I guess that means like their food, and the care of women.
Good.
Adeo namque sexus infirmior fortioris indiget auxilio. For indeed, the weaker sex needs the help of the stronger. Ut semper virum mulieri quasi caput praese apostolus statuat. So that the apostle always establishes the man to preside over the woman as the head.
Good.
Good.
Before you go on, Mona, notice the adeo, which is like Tom. It's a really sneaky word, right? It can even mean adeo, I go towards, but it also regularly sets up a result clause. So it's actually, I mean, you kind of didn't need to know that it was a result clause, but it just kind of is, right? So the weaker sex. So to such an extent does the weaker sex require help that the Lord, the apostle, ordained that man should be ahead of the woman. So it's just a refinement of that, and it's mostly just worth. I just find adeo, unlike Tom and tantum and those other words, seek, which are much more obviously words to set up result clauses. Adeo is kind of a sleeper, so one tends to kind of not see it. Any other thoughts?
That's kind of interesting, because I always see the odd in adeo, and it makes me think
towards something.
Right. I think it is. I think originally is odd plus ao, right? To such an extent, right? But it just gets used in that special way.
So And then the last sentence, in cujus etiam rei signo ipsam semper relatum habere caput praecipit. And in cujus rei, in as a token of which also he, meaning the apostle, praecipit, he admonishes the woman herself always to have her head covered.
Yes. Good.
Okay, then section 74. Okay. Unde non mediocriter mirror consuetudines has in monasteriis durum in no levisse. Wherefore, I wonder not a little, non mediocriter, that these customs have developed for a long time. Quod quim ad modum viris abbates, ita et feminis abbatisae praeponantur. Insofar as just as abbots are praeponantur, are placed over men, even so abbesses, abbatisae, are placed over women. Eustem regulae professione tam feminae quam viri se astringant. And the women, as well as the men, say astringant, are bound. Literally they bind themselves, but they are bound in profession of the same rule. In qua tamen pleraque continentur, quae a feminis tam praelatis quam subiectis nulla tenus possunt ad impleri, in which, being, I think, in general, being bound to the regula, in which, nevertheless, very many things are included, which are nulla tenus, in no way able to be fulfilled by women, as much by the heads of nunneries as by their subordinates, nuns, the heads of the abbesses and their regulars, I guess. In plerisque etiam locis ordine perturbato naturali, ipsas abbatisas atque monialis clerices quoque ipsis quibus subes populus dominari conspicimus. Also, in very many places, and then this sort of ablative absolute, the natural order having been upset, conspicimus, we see that the abbesses themselves and the nuns have dominion over the clerics themselves as well. Whom the people are sort of subject to. Et tanto facilius eos ad prava desideria inducere posse, and they, I guess they means the abbesses, are able to lead them so much more easily to depraved desires. Quanto eis amplius habent praese, the more power they have to dominate them. Et jugum illud in eos gravissimum exercere, and to enforce, to, I guess, impose that yoke on them most oppressively. Quod satiricus ille considerans tolerabilius nihil est quam femina dives, which that satirist, understood Juvenal, pondering, said, nothing is more intolerable than a rich woman.
Mm-hmm. Good. So there's various complicated discussions about this whole question of whether in the Middle Ages women were allowed to be in control of male clerics, right? But I haven't been, apparently it was an issue. So, apparently Abelard had his opinions.
It was an issue, but it did happen. There were
Right.
women who were in charge of mixed monasteries.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really curious case in the late 12th century of a woman who was a local noble. She was the widow of another noble who they had both joined the order as confratres,
Mm-hmm.
so associated with the order. And she, after he died, she is listed as the preceptrix, as the commander of the house. It was like a rural house of the order, and she was taking brothers into the order.
Mm-hmm.
So she was operating as a full officer.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I argued in my thesis was that there were people who were sort of in this, they may not have taken the triple vow, but they are acting as full brethren in the latter half of the early part of the order in northeastern Spain. And she's one of the examples. And she also had an assistant who was also female and was also a sister of the order, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's interesting to see, I mean, how much of an exception to Abelard's general view on women Heloise is when you look at this. I mean, he doesn't describe Heloise at the same level of disdain, or I don't know, I mean, this is not the way he talks about Heloise when he writes about Heloise. And he doesn't write about her as weaker or as less able to contain herself. So it's interesting. At least I found it interesting to see. I mean, because these are exactly the views that someone in the monasteries at this time would have had about their sisters in the order, how they're basically too powerful, they need to be curtailed, they need to be held in check, et cetera, from a very sort of homosocial setting. But that's not how he writes when he writes about Heloise, which indicates, I don't know, maybe that his views on her were formed at a different stage in his life than his general views on women. I don't know.
He's the exception that proves the rule, I think.
Are you sure? I mean, you've read, I think you've probably read this stuff much more than I have, but are you sure you're not assuming that because he loves her and thinks she's smart and cute, that he, as it were, isn't, and therefore doesn't, and of course in that context, you don't sit around saying typically sexist things, right? But it doesn't stop you from thinking that women shouldn't be in charge of men, or there's no such thing as a rich man. You can think your lover is beautiful and brilliant, and I mean, I'm pretty sure that people have been doing this for some time now, and also holding more general views about the place of women in society.
Well, I think that's definitely the case. I find it very interesting to see where his specific views on Heloise are coming into conflict with his general views.
Right. It would be interesting to see if there actually really are conflicts, right? Whether, because of course the fact that she's in charge, he doesn't have any problem with abbesses being in charge of nuns, right? He just doesn't want them in charge of men.
Well, I don't think there is a contradiction here, because she's literally the exception that proves the rule. It's not that they stated that there were not exceptional women. There certainly were exceptional women. You've got the dichotomy between the Virgin Mary and Eve, and about 1% of the women maybe are the Virgin Mary, and the other 99% go with Eve. And so you've got female saints, and they are considered by some writers to be more holy than the male saints because they have to overcome more natural weakness. So you can see him being impressed by Heloise as sort of perceiving her or portraying her as a kind of saint. But that doesn't mean he has any higher opinion of women.
Right.
It is, I find there's this almost legalistic concern that he professes at the beginning that it's actually just an issue in the rules that women can't fulfill what they're supposed to fulfill on the basis of the rule. Therefore, men and women shouldn't be subject to the same rule. But then at the end, you get the prava desideria, which is a much more common sort of, misogynistic sort of saw, right? This idea that there's some sort of baser instinct, that it's not just that the rule is ill-adapted to both men and women. It's also that the issue is that if you put women in charge, and then there's the juvenile at the end, it's clearly this isn't just about a Christian context. This
Right.
isn't cool. There's nothing worse than a rich woman, is how he ends the paragraph. So I find it very interesting because there's a lot going on there. There's this call to authority. There's some sort of innate suspicion. But again, he's talking specifically about his situation with Heloise in the rest of this. So
Right.
I don't know.
I also wondered whether Abelard thought that at some level Heloise had induced his desire for her, her responsibility.
Ooh.
He doesn't write about that, but at the same time,
He thinks it generally.
yeah, you wonder. He certainly probably saw the outcome for him as being worse than the outcome for her.
Well, with some justification.
Yeah. All right. Very good, Mona. You ready, Victoria?
Yes. 75. Hoc ego saepe apudbe pertractando, quantum mihi liceret, sororibus illis providere et earum curam agere disposuram. Studying this within myself, I arranged as much as it was allowed to me, or as much as it was possible for me, to provide for the sisters and to conduct or to arrange the care of them. Et quo me amplius reverentur corporali quoque presentia es invigilare. And that they might reverence me the more, to watch over them also in physical presence. Is that how to take that? Et sic etiam earum magis necessitudinibus subvernire. And thus also to provide or to succor them with their necessities the more. Et cum ne nunc frequentior ac maior persecutio filiorum quam olim fratrem affligeret. And when persecution afflicted me now more frequently and more greatly, maior, from the sons than from the brothers formerly. Why is there a difference here between what's up with the filiorum versus fratrum?
I thought about it's back in the old days when he was at Saint Denis, he was being persecuted by his brothers. And now that he's in charge of his own monastery in Brittany, he's being persecuted by his sons.
His metaphorical sons, okay.
Metaphorical sons. Well, they're metaphorical brothers too, of course.
Well,
yes.
Okay, yes. Ad eas de estu quius tempestatis, quasi ad quendam tranquillitatis portum recurrerem, atque ibi aliquantulum respirarem, et qui in monachis nullum aliquem saltem in illis assequere fructum. So he was, since now he was being more persecuted, to them, the women, from the heat or anxiety of this storm, I would recur, I would go back, so that I might find some kind of a port of tranquility, and so that I might breathe a little there, and which among the monks I had none of, I might attain at least some outcome or fruit, good progress among them. Ac tanto id mihi fieret magis saluberrimum, quanto idearum infirmitate magis esset necessarium. And by so much as it was more healthy, more salutary for me, by that it was the more helpful or the more salutary for me by the same amount as it was necessary, more necessary due to the weakness of them.
Yeah, good. So it was a win-win situation, right? Pareto, as they say. One more literal translation of that quasi ad quendam tranquillitatis portum recurrerem is just, I took it just as I would go back to them from the heat of this storm as though to a certain port of tranquility, just introducing a simile, right?
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Brian.
Okay. I feel we've kind of missed a transition here somewhere because things turn bad for him in this next paragraph.
Yes.
Nunc autem ita me satanas in pedivit, ut ubi quiscere possim aut etiam vivere non inveniam, sed vagus et profugus ad instar maledicti caem ubique circumferar. Now, however, Satan so hindered me that I was neither able to rest or even to live, but a wanderer and a fugitive. I was carried about everywhere like the accursed Cain.
Yes, but before you go on, did you get the non inveniam so that I couldn't find?
Oh, I couldn't find, excuse me.
It's complicated, right? It's kind of,
I
couldn't find where I could live or even live, where I could be quiet or even live. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Although those are present subjunctives. So now Satan has blocked me so that I am not.
Can't find, right, good. Yes, very important point, right. Because we are, just in case you didn't know, we're building to the climax and the end. And basically he ends up in big trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
As opposed to everything before that's been so smooth.
Well, that was all in the past, and now he's got the present. So I think the present is really important here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Keep going, Ryan.
Quem ut supra memini foris pugnae intus timores incessanter cruciant, imo tam foris quam intus pugnae pariter et timores. Whom, as I remembered from before, the fighting outside and fears inside tormented incessantly. So is this whom Cain that's being tormented?
That's
Quem?
I think it's me.
Yeah.
And I think, again, to piggyback on Jen's point, notice cruciant is present. So in other words, I whom, as I said before, these torments are tormenting.
Okay, thank you. Indeed, the fighting outside was equally as dreadful as the fighting within.
Right.
So the fighting within, is that his internal disturbance or distress? I'm trying to figure out what outside I can see he has all these enemies who are driving him crazy, but then what is the fighting within?
Trying to kill him.
Isn't it? It's a kind of a joke, right? Is that, well, a joke is or a play on words or a because the fighting outside, the original quote is talking about outside, and then inside your heart there's fear, and now he says, but there's fighting inside too, and that means because in my own monastery there's fighting, right? Because he's going to go on to make this distinction between I was actually safer outside the monastery where I could see my enemies than inside where they sneak up on me. So I do. Isn't that right? So whether you call that a joke or a clever manipulation of the original quotation, I mean, joke would be an odd word in this context.
Like a pun almost.
Yes.
Play on words.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he's joking. I think he thinks they're trying to kill him.
Oh, I think they're trying to kill him. Right. I think they really are trying to kill him. And I didn't know that this is apparently a fairly normal thing in the Middle Ages, that, I mean, or at least certainly not unheard of, that people try and kill their adversaries. Anyway, keep going.
Okay. Et multo periculosior et crebrior persecutio filiorum et versum me savit quam hostium. And the dangers of my son's rage against me more frequently and more greatly than that of my enemies. Istos quipe semper praesentis habeo et eorum insidias iugatur sustineo. As you see, I always considered, this is historical present again, I guess, those presenting danger or to him, or
I think I just always have them there, is how I took it. I always have them present. I have them right there with me.
Okay, so, and put up with or fend off the ceaseless treacherous attacks of them.
Yes.
Hostium violentiam in corporis me periculum video, si al claustro procedam. I see the violence of enemies a danger to my body if I would appear out of the house.
Yeah, if I leave the cloister. Good. And it's about to get exciting.
I'm sorry. I have, I guess a comment and a question. Estos quipe semper presentes habeo. So that's like, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I keep them always where I can see them.
Yeah, I took it. I would think it's more that he's stuck with them than it's a particular policy of his.
Okay.
Like, I always have them there.
Yeah,
Sorry?
He always has them there.
Right.
And he's explaining why the persecution from his the monks under him is more dangerous and more frequent than his enemies, by which he means the people outside. Quipe, right. In as much as I always have the monks right here, and I have to keep putting up with their murder plots.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
then
like in as much as. That's a great translation.
the last sentence, is there a way to translate in corporis mei periculum, or do you just have to change the order of the words? Against the danger. I see the violence of the enemy, I want it to be against me or against my body, not against the danger.
Yeah, that is odd, isn't it?
I keep having a problem that I keep trying to translate it grammatically and it keeps not working.
Right.
Like the
Well,
word.
I wondered if it might be like a double acute object or something.
Isn't it referencing the
The
Bible?
Olentium is an object.
Isn't it what?
Isn't it referencing the Bible in corpus meum? In corpus meum? Or,
I don't think so. I think that's you mean hoc est corpus meum?
yeah.
I don't think so. I think that's just the single most famous phrase in which the word corpus occurs, right? Brian, was it who had another suggestion? The double accusative suggestion?
Well, it seems like both violentiam and periculum are accusatives. So I have to kind of parallel. I see the violence of enemies as a danger to my body, or.
Well, so the in has to govern periculum because it can't govern corporis mei.
Oh, okay.
Right? So I do think what Margaret said is, I think the literal translation is what she said. And I think you're right, and I hadn't thought about it very much, that it, strictly speaking, doesn't make much sense. The violence against the danger of my body, except it kind of does. So I guess, which is why I didn't really worry about it, but maybe I should. Does anyone?
Well, I see the violence of my enemies in the peril of my body.
Okay.
But in has to be against, right? In with the accusative really has to be.
What's the in? I don't know the word for it. What's the in that works with muto? Like you change something into something, but you don't mean into in the sense of moving into something. You mean it sort of like in the sense of the final result of the verb. Like here he's saying, I see sort of this violence, like resulting in the sort of peril of my body, like violence towards the peril of my body, in the like up to the point of the peril of my body. What is that in that works with muto? What do we call that? It's not a movement word. It's not a movement. It's not. You're not.
Well, in can express the result exactly as you said it. It can express the final result of a verb or an action, and so like there's against isn't the only way you can translate it.
Right.
In plus the accusative, but I think that this is more towards. I see the violence of my enemies directed towards the danger of my body. Like, and the danger of my body sounds awful in English. Mm-hmm. Like if you said something like endangering my life, might start to sound more like English. Maybe that's part of the problem is we don't say the danger of my body, and so it sounds weird to us.
I see the violence of my enemies in my bodily peril.
Something like that.
Oh, I like that.
Directed toward endangering my life.
Right. It's true. I think all of those things make it easier. I think a nuance, maybe more within, meaning more with the result, more the end towards the result that being more intentional than physical, right? And I think Jen's point that danger of our body seems weird. Danger of my violence resulting in the danger of my life makes perfect sense. Almost. It's a little awkward still.
Or
but it gets around Margaret's original
arm or something.
So it may just be like a weird feature of idiom, right? That the idiom just doesn't translate. It may be that periculum corporis mei is a perfectly normal Latin idiom, but I don't know it as that.
Was it said once that in an accusative can mean purpose, like the danger of the enemy for the purpose of, the violence of the enemy for the purpose of endangering my body?
Yes, I mean that's a kind of I think we're back to the literal translation. Well, a better literal translation, right? Good. Are we okay? But thank you for pointing that out. That I just kind of shrugged my shoulders.
Thank you for explaining it.
Anybody want to volunteer for 76.2? Jen?
I'm happy to do it.
Good.
In claustro autem filiorum id est monacorum, mihi tamquam abati hoc est patri commissorum, tam violenta quam dolosa incesanter sustineo machina menta. Really worked hard on some of these sentences in the midst of all this people trying to murder him. So, however, moreover, so I think referring back to there's danger if I go out, but in the cloister of my sons, that is of the monks, my sons having been entrusted commissorum me as their abbot, that is, as their father, I am withstanding plots, machina menta, that are as violent as they are treacherous constantly without any pause.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, quotiems veneno me perdere tempta verunt. Oh, how often have they tried to destroy me by means of poison? Sicut et in beato factum est benedicto. Just as also happened in the case of Saint Benedict.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it got a little weird. Axi haec ipsa causa, qua ille perversos deseruit filios, ad hoc ipsum me patenter tanti patris exhortaretur exemplo. Just as if axi haec ipsa causa, this very reason qua by which ille, that guy Benedict, deserted his wicked sons, perversos, his sons who've gone away from the right thing to do. Just as if that reason were exhorting me ad hortaretur, to this thing, me myself, openly, by the example of such a great father, and then something's missing. Me certo videlicet opponens periculo, temerarios de temptator potius quam amator, immo me ipsius peremptor invenire. So that I wouldn't be found invenire, to be a rash tempter of God rather than a lover, nay, rather a destroyer of myself, by putting myself, opponens, literally putting myself, but in English you would probably say by putting myself in, namely by putting myself in definite danger. But the main part of the sentence just isn't there.
Right. They don't seem to think it's a textual problem. They just seem to think it's a weird lapse. Everyone get that? Other than that problem?
Not really.
Okay. Not really get it?
Right.
So you see that there's this unfulfilled condition, right?
Well, is it unfilled?
Yeah.
Well, it's uncompleted.
Yeah,
So,
the main cause.
and if this cause, and then nothing happens, right? There's no, then I would leave.
Oh,
and then it goes, less certainly anyway. So Margaret, you can feel bad about not it's I think that either the text is corrupt or it's very rhetorical, and it's just like I would maybe punctuate with ... and postulate then I get to say the word aposiopesis, where someone just breaks off for rhetorical purposes, right? So in other words, if I couldn't straighten things out, blah blah blah. I mean, sorry, if I couldn't straighten things out, dramatic pause, lest I suffer. I can't do it off the top of my head, but
That's pretty good.
Jen can probably act it out. Okay, this is a longer assignment than normal. And that way we have a short one for next time for our final meeting. Thank you, Jen. Paula, 77.1. You get kind of this is my favorite paragraph.
Am I the only one who kept thinking of Michael Palin with the little dogs in A Fish Called Wanda?
Yes.
But think about it. He keeps
I
going
always-
with that.
I always hated that movie.
He keeps getting her dog.
I hate that movie, but go ahead.
Eat a fish called Wanda? That's hysterical. I love that.
There's something that's very disturbing about it. I don't know what.
And also, I mean, at least what wasn't it, two of the Monty Python? They had medieval history degrees, so it's not
That explains.
entirely beyond the pale that he might have thought of this.
That explains.
Beyond the Palin.
I think
Beyond-
I think I found the thing that was confusing me with the oxy. Sorry if I just shove this in. I think it's so I've seen this a lot used this way, and I realize it's a corruption of proper classical Latin, but I'm pretty sure it's used in the sense of tanquam oxy, aeque oxy, similiter oxy. It's a comparative. It's not really function as a conditional here.
Ah.
As it means as if this very sort of reason were being sort of presented. We're sort of exhorting me by this sort of example of this very father, so that I might not be found to be a destroyer of myself. It's like aequioxy, so just as if.
Which is how I translated. That is what oxy means, but as if this. I don't know. Like it really it felt to me like there was something that wasn't there.
Well, I think it's just the like they're trying to kill me with poison, almost like they're trying to remind me of the story of Benedict. How many times they've tried to kill me with poison, just as if this sort of very sort of situation was exhorting me to go away lest I be found a killer of myself.
But then what do you do with the nay and what follows after that?
Well, that's just a sort of is that a negative result clause in this case, or negative purpose clause, I guess? So that I might not be found.
Yeah, negative purpose.
Okay.
So you've got the quotient centaur, just your sort of main bit there. Then you've got this exactly as you translated it, Jen. This sort of the comparative clause, just as if, and then finally coming off of the comparative clause, you've got the negative purpose clause. I think. I don't know why this stuck in my brain like that.
All right. I'm gonna have to sit down and think about it. Not online with everybody else here. I don't know. Do you guys have brain freeze in front of the computer? I find it very hard to think.
No, that's
Clearly.
just my normal mode of existence. Right?
Oh, okay.
Nothing new there.
It feels like you're pushing through some sort of mist sometimes.
Yeah. All right, back to Paula and back to moving on from A Fish Called Wanda.
Okay.
Paula, I think if you need another topic to write about, or I realize you don't need another dissertation, I think the medieval influences on the Pythons would reach a small but enthusiastic readership.
I don't know how small it would be, actually. The Pythons are pretty
Might
popular.
be bigger than most of the things that most of us write about.
that kind of topic, the Eidolon people, I don't know if have seen their
right.
online journal, but it is peer reviewed, and but they concentrate a lot on like reception stuff with culture, and they just did a big Harry Potter thing, so they'd love that topic.
Yeah, so write an article about it, Paula.
I'm sorry, what was the reference, Jen? The what?
Eidolon. Eidolon.
Did you hear that? It's EIDO.
Yeah.
It's the popular journal produced by the organization formerly known as the APA, which is now the classical. What do they call them? I can never remember what it's called. CSA? No.
SCS.
SCS, right?
They were affiliated with Paideia, and then they've broken that affiliation.
Oh yeah. Anyway, it's a kind of fun facts. I mean, fun things that you didn't know about the ancient world. I don't remember how often it comes out. I don't think it's online though. I think you actually have to subscribe.
No, I found Eidolon. It's online.
Oh, good. Okay. Anyway, they would be thrilled by, although of course I don't know how medieval they are, but probably a little bit. Actually, they're also, I mean, I could do the classical allusions, of course, in Monty Python. The whole, especially the cheese shop incident. Have you got any? He asked, expecting the answer no, right? Anyhow, we digress.
Okay. You ready?
Paula, this is right.
Okay. A talibus autem quotidianis eorum insidis, cum mihi in administratione cibi vel potus, quantum posem providerem in ipso altaris sacrificio toxicare me moliti sunt. Veneno scilicet calici or calici imiso. There's the end of it. But for such daily plots of theirs, with me in the administration of food or drink, as much as I would be able, I would watch out. On the sacrifice itself of the altar, they endeavored to smear with poison for me, for the poison introduced namely in the chalice.
You went very fast. I'm processing. Hold it. On the sacrifice, on the very sacrifice of the altar.
Yeah.
They tried to poison me. Right. With poison, in fact, having been stuck into the chalice, having sent into the chalice.
That seems kind of dangerous for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Now, is it me or we're about to find out just how dangerous. But is it me or are they smearing both the host and the wine? Are they poisoning both the host and the wine?
Why would they do that?
We said
all you need is one good poison.
No. I mean, they're using the poison on both the host and the cup.
Where does it say host?
There's no host.
Well, on the sacrifice itself of the altar.
Oh, I think that just means I took it that just to mean what you might say in the middle of Holy Communion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like circumstantial.
Yeah, I see what you mean though.
So
because the smear thing, they're putting it into the cup. Are they really smearing the cup, or are they actually? When they actually put something in the cup?
I assume that second thing, right? I mean, I don't know much about poisoning except what I see on TV, right? But
well, it just says imiso. Does that mean
poison in the chalice? Right. Well, no, it means having been sent in, right? Having been with poison, having been introduced into the chalice, right?
But how would they do that in the middle of the communion?
With a secret ring, that I know from TV, right?
Yeah.
Ring. And you open it.
I don't know how common this was in the medieval period, but there were actually cups, supposedly, in the classical period that are supposed to have a poison compartment.
Wow.
So my source there being the Cambridge Latin course, of course, where they try to in cognitiveness, but they based that on actual stuff. So they're
I've heard of that.
So you don't need a separate ring. The cup itself you can hide poison in.
Oh,
Well, I can certainly see them doing it before. It makes it sound like they're doing it right during communion, which I would think would be the most awkward time to be doing it.
Well,
it's clearly a hugely awkward time anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's about as awkward as you can get.
well, isn't that why so much of this sounds completely fake? Like,
right.
Well,
I mean, people drop dead all the time, right? So, I mean, people are always suspecting poison whenever someone dies and you don't know why, and you say, oh, it must have been the poison.
Poison.
right. And in this case, of course, it's the opposite. He didn't die. And you could say anytime that someone tried to poison you.
Yeah.
Right. And if you were going to lie about it, why not say right in the middle of Holy Communion?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
sort of
Because the other plan would be like, let's just have a Holy Communion just for our monks said, actually, we'll just pass this time. Right.
Yeah. But
So,
you don't
anyhow, so I don't know whether the historicity of this claim has been challenged or questioned, or whether I can't remember from the biography. I think the biographies that I remember reading just said, as a matter of fact, yes, his monks tried to poison him when he was in Brittany. So I don't know if it's really true, or whether historians think it's true.
Wouldn't it have just
Keep going, Paul.
One point of I wouldn't dogma theology, ecclesiastical procedure. He's acting as the head priest, as he's acting as a priest for his monks, and they were still going on. There's no mention of a priest, so I'm assuming he's acting as a priest to his monks, and I'm guessing he's hearing their confessions as well. This was still common up to about this period, but by a century later, that's considered heretical. The monks are confessing to a priest and instead of their abbot. Because the Templars run into this when they're being interrogated in the early 14th century. They're way behind the times. And there are some Templars who are saying, oh, well, I thought it was okay just to confess my sins to my abbot, to the commander. Even though they had priests attached to them because they were only monks. So it's kind of interesting because was Abelard ever ordained a priest?
I don't remember. Hang on. Oh, Brian's got
I know someone is.
I don't know. We're getting out of.
Okay.
I think we're getting off.
Let's get back to it. All right. So, qui etiam quadam die. What? What?
No one said anything.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard something. I think my connection's getting bouncy because another storm's coming. Okay. Qui etiam quadam die cum namneti ad comitem in egritudine sua visitandum venisem. See, who even on a certain day when I had come visiting the Count of Nantes, right, hospitatum me ibi in domo cuistam fratris mei carnalis, hospitality to me there in the house of a certain fleshly brother of mine. So there was hospitality for me there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What? Okay. I'm sorry. I keep hearing weird noises. So from you guys. I don't want to interrupt anybody. Per ipsum qui in comitatu nostro erat famulum veneno interficere machinate nati sunt. Where that is, sorry. Oh, no. Through he who in our retinue was a servant, they devised to kill by poison, kill me by poison.
Mm-hmm.
Ubi videlicet me minus a tali machinatione providere crediderant. Where that is to say, they entrusted the lesser man to provide me by such an artifice.
Sorry. Cat problems, dog problems.
That's okay.
So I got distracted.
What's Minas? She said a lesser man. Is that the servant?
That's a servant. Yeah, should be the servant, I think.
Now that I think the end there, ubi where videlicet, obviously, of course, to explain this, they believed, then there's an indirect statement, so created errant. They believed that I, minus pro videre, was like less on my guard against tali machinatione, against such a plot.
Right. Minus is an adverb.
Yeah.
A lesser man would be minor.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Jen.
And just in case the structure of the sentence wasn't clear, qui is the subject that's referring back to the monks who are trying to kill him.
Mhm.
The main verb is machinati sunt. They plotted interficere to kill, and then the me is the object in the previous line. Me, hospitatum describes that, like staying with, staying in domo, in the house, and then they tried to kill me through the agency of the servant, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay. Vina autem dispositione tunc actum est, ut dum cibum mihi apparatum non curarem, but divine direction afterwards was done that while I would not arrange the prepared food for myself.
Back it down. This is where we want long marks in our Latin texts.
Yeah.
So, duina is ablative with dispositione. So, but by divine dispensation, then it happened that.
Okay. More like divine intervention, I would think.
Yeah. While I wasn't paying any attention, I guess how the food, sorry?
Distracted.
Right. I'm just trying to construe the cibum apparatum.
Prepared food?
I wasn't looking after the prepared food.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to the food that had been prepared for me.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, keep going, Colin. Sorry.
Okay. Frater quidam ex monachis, quem mecum adduxeram, hoc cibo per ignorantiam usus, ibidem mortus ocum beret. Some brother from the monks whom I brought with me, this food through ignorance used. At that very instant isn't he sank down dead? So, okay, yeah, right. Et famulus ille qui hoc presumt serat, tam conscientiae suae, quam testimonio ipsius vei, perteritus aufugeret. And that servant who had anticipated this, so much by his conscience that he was frightened by the testimony of the thing itself, he fled.
Praesumo, I think, is not so much anticipate as presumed to do it, who had dared to do it, who had undertaken it. And then he fled, I guess, just as much because of his conscience as because of the fact, right? The fact that the guy dropped down dead. So terrified, I guess, both by his conscience and his not conscience.
Guilt?
Yes, well, sense of, I mean, I think conscientia means is like, what do I mean? Consciousness. The fact that he did it, he knew he did it. We have a word for that? Complicity.
Yeah.
Because he was because he wasn't terrified by conscience. He was terrified by the fact that he knew he was guilty, and he was terrified by the fact also that the guy dropped down dead, proving somebody was guilty, and so he ran away. Okay.
I would think also you'd be a bit superstitious and be freaked out by the fact that he killed the wrong man.
Right, and he might feel bad about it even. Who knows?
Or nobody was trying to kill anybody, and somebody died coincidentally, and he was like, "Man, they're gonna blame me," and he ran away.
Yes.
He was just a little fluffy dog.
I have nothing further to say. Does anyone have anything further to say? I think we've settled all of these problems.
We're almost there. We got one more.
Right.
I know.
One more week.
There.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Take care.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Next week.
Good night.
Bye-bye.